You saved me once. The hospital corridor stretched out before them, bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. Marcus stood perfectly still, one hand resting protectively on his son's small shoulder. Little Evan, barely 5 years old, pointed down the hallway with wide, uncertain eyes. Daddy, is that her? Marcus followed his son's gaze to the woman walking away from them. Even from behind, even after 3 years, he recognized her immediately. The way she carried herself, that particular stride, the cascade of blonde hair catching the light. His breath caught in his chest. Yes, buddy, he whispered. That's her. The woman disappeared around the corner, and Marcus felt something shift inside him. A door he thought he'd closed forever had just blown open again. 3 years ago, Dr. Sarah Mitchell had saved Evan's life. His son had been born premature, fighting for every breath in the neonatal intensive care unit. Marcus had been a wreck back then, newly divorced, terrified, barely holding himself together. Sarah had been the night shift doctor who stayed late, who checked on Evan when she didn't have to, who placed her hand on Marcus's shoulder and told him, "Your son is a fighter. And you are too." She had been right. Evan had survived, thrived, even, but Sarah had left the hospital shortly after, and Marcus had never gotten the chance to thank her properly. To tell her what her kindness had meant during the darkest period of his life. Now she was here, back. Marcus made a decision. Come on, Evan, we're going to say hello to an old friend. They found her in the family consultation room, reviewing files at a desk. She looked up as they entered, and Marcus watched recognition dawn in her eyes. Then something else flickered across her face. Something that looked almost like fear. Dr. Mitchell, Marcus said softly. I don't know if you remember us. Sarah stood slowly, a professional smile fixed on her face. But Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders. Mr. Thornton, of course I remember. And this must be Evan. My goodness, look how big you've gotten. Evan hid partly behind his father's leg, suddenly shy. I've wanted to thank you for 3 years, Marcus continued. You saved my son's life. You saved me too, in a way. When I felt most lost, you gave me hope. I was just doing my job, Sarah said quietly. But her hands trembled slightly as she gathered her files. Marcus studied her more carefully now. The Sarah he remembered had been vibrant, energetic, always ready with a warm smile. This woman looked tired. There were shadows under her eyes, and she kept glancing toward the door as if planning an escape route. Are you back at the hospital permanently? He asked. I'm covering some shifts. Temporarily. She moved toward the door. I'm sorry, I have rounds to make. But as she passed them, Evan suddenly reached out and grabbed her hand. Thank you for saving me, he said in his small, earnest voice. Sarah looked down at the little boy, and for just a moment, her careful composure cracked. Her eyes filled with tears. You're very welcome, sweetheart, she whispered. Then she was gone. Marcus couldn't stop thinking about that encounter. As CEO of Thornton Industries, he was used to reading people, understanding situations, seeing what others missed. And everything about Sarah's behavior told him that something was wrong. Over the next week, he found excuses to visit the hospital. He donated new equipment to the pediatric wing. He brought Evan for a routine checkup. Each time, he caught glimpses of Sarah, and each time, his concern grew. She was always looking over her shoulder. Always positioning herself near exits. Always tense. Finally, one evening, he stayed late at the hospital after a board meeting. He found Sarah in the parking garage, standing by her car, fumbling with her keys. Her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't get the key into the lock. Sarah, he called out gently. She spun around, and the fear in her eyes was unmistakable now. Marcus held up his hands, showing he meant no harm. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. But I can see that something's wrong. And I want to help. You can't help me, she said, her voice breaking. No one can. Try me. For a long moment, she just stared at him. Then, slowly, the whole story came out. An ex-boyfriend who wouldn't accept that their relationship was over. Escalating harassment, threats. She'd left her previous hospital to get away from him, but he'd found her again. The police couldn't do much without concrete evidence of a crime. She was trapped in a nightmare of fear, always looking over her shoulder, never feeling safe. I don't know what to do anymore, she admitted, tears streaming down her face. I'm so tired of being scared. Marcus felt something fierce and protective surge through him. This woman had been there for him during his darkest hour. She'd given him hope when he had none. She'd saved his son. Now it's my turn to protect you, he said firmly. He offered her his guest house, a secure property on his estate with its own entrance and state-of-the-art security system. When she hesitated, he said simply, "You were there for Evan when he needed you most. Let me be here for you now." Sarah accepted. The next few weeks changed everything. With Marcus's lawyers helping her obtain a restraining order, with security that actually kept her safe, Sarah began to heal. The fear in her eyes gradually faded. She started sleeping through the night again. Her smile returned, genuine and warm. Evan adored having her around. She taught him about stars and planets, read him bedtime stories, showed him how to plant vegetables in the garden. Marcus would come home from work to find them covered in dirt and laughing. And somewhere in those ordinary, beautiful moments, Marcus fell in love. It happened quietly, like dawn breaking. One morning, he found Sarah in the kitchen, making pancakes for Evan, humming softly to herself. She was wearing one of his old sweaters, her hair pulled back, and she looked so perfectly at home that his heart simply knew. When Sarah's ex-boyfriend was finally arrested for violating the restraining order, Marcus expected her to move out, to return to her old life. Instead, she stayed. "I know this started as you helping me," she said one evening, standing in the garden while Evan chased fireflies. "But somewhere along the way, I fell in love with your life. With Evan, with you." Marcus took her hands in his. "3 years ago, you saved my son. These past few months, you've saved us both all over again. You've made us a family. So what happens now?" she asked softly. Marcus smiled. "Now I spend the rest of my life making sure you always feel safe. Always feel loved. Always feel home." He kissed her while Evan cheered in the background, and the last of the day's golden light wrapped around them like a blessing. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. And sometimes, the person you save ends up saving you right back.